In the span of 36 months, she lost a co-star she'd known for over a decade, underwent 2 separate surgeries for 2 completely different conditions, watched her sister face a serious health crisis, canceled her entire performing career, and then opened a museum. That person is Danielle Colby, the face of Antique Archaeology on American Pickers, and the woman who has been holding together one of the History Channel's longest-running franchises since day one of its existence. By the end of this, you won't just understand what happened to Danielle Colby. You'll understand why everything that happened is only part of the story. Growing up in Davenport, Iowa, as the child of Jehovah's Witness parents did not leave a lot of room for self-expression. The faith shaped everything: what she wore, where she could go, and crucially, how other kids saw her. Being raised in a household that separated itself from mainstream culture made Danielle an outsider from early childhood. Other children kept their distance. She described her parents as contradictions: active protesters from the hippie era on one hand, deeply devout on the other. A household full of antiques, strong opinions, and not much tolerance for the conventional path. By her late 20s, she had been married, had 2 children, a son Miles and a daughter Memphis, and divorced. She had played roller derby with a team called the Big Mouth Mickeys and spent 3 years on the rink before injuries forced her off it permanently. She was running a burlesque troupe called Burlesque La Moustache across eastern Iowa and western Illinois, performing under the stage name Danny Diesel. She had opened a burlesque academy in Chicago's Rogers Park neighborhood. She had run a vintage clothing boutique. None of it had anything to do with television. Mike Wolfe had known her for nearly a decade before a single camera rolled on American Pickers. When he needed someone to run the office for Antique Archaeology, he called a friend, not a casting agency. Danielle was already living the life that would eventually make her compelling on screen. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. American Pickers premiered on the History Channel in January 2010 and became the most-watched cable series debut of its moment, drawing over 3 million viewers to its first episode. Danielle was not a host in the traditional sense. She was not out picking barns and back roads with Mike and Frank. She was the anchor, the one who sourced the leads, managed the shop, coordinated the logistics, and gave the whole operation a personality that made the audience feel like they were watching a real business rather than a produced reality format. That distinction matters because her value to the show was never just screen time. It was context. She made Antique Archaeology feel like a place that actually existed. For 12 consecutive seasons, Danielle was the constant. Mike Wolfe came and went on location. Frank Fritz became one of the most beloved figures in the format's history. But the shop, the nerve center, was hers. Then 2022 arrived, and the life she had carefully built started to fracture. She never talked about this publicly, until now. The first sign was pain she could not explain. Danielle began noticing changes in her body, severe, irregular bleeding and pelvic pain that was worsening by the month. When doctors investigated, the diagnosis was uterine fibroids, growths made of muscle and tissue forming in the wall of the uterus. She described them on social media as incredibly painful, a phrasing that barely captured what she was experiencing. Her doctor recommended a hysterectomy, the surgical removal of the uterus. At 46 years old, Danielle went into hospital, posted a photo of herself in a pre-surgical chair holding a Dunkin' Donuts cup, and told her followers she felt mostly gratitude despite everything. She missed episodes. She temporarily stepped away from season 23. Some fans assumed the departure was permanent, or the result of behind-the-scenes conflict. The truth was simpler and harder. She was in recovery. She came back. Season 24. Back on screen, back at the shop, and then, in late 2023, the second diagnosis arrived. Most people who know this story stop here, but the real story starts right now. Trigeminal neuralgia does not get discussed in celebrity health coverage the way cancer or cardiac events do, but it should. It is a chronic neurological condition affecting the trigeminal nerve, the nerve responsible for sensation across the entire face. When it activates, the pain is severe enough that the medical community has historically documented it as among the worst chronic pain a human being can experience. The condition has, in clinical literature, been associated with some of the highest rates of mental health deterioration of any pain disorder. Danielle went public about what she was experiencing in late 2023. She described intense, unrelenting pain moving through her face, jaw, ear, neck, arm, and hand on her right side. Doctors identified the cause: a tumor in her face that was triggering the nerve. She underwent surgery to remove it. Coming off a hysterectomy the previous year, She was now navigating a second major surgical procedure in less than 18 months. She returned. Again. What happened next is the reason this story spread across the internet. Frank Fritz had not been on American Pickers since 2021. His departure had come after a publicly reported falling out with Mike Wolfe, a rift that had developed over years and became unavoidable. Fritz had also spoken openly about his struggle with alcohol and had entered treatment. By 2022, he had suffered a severe stroke and never returned to public life in any meaningful capacity. In September 2024, Frank Fritz died. He was 60 years old. The cause was complications from that stroke, cerebral vascular disease, with additional contributing conditions documented in his death certificate. Danielle had known Frank for years. When she wrote about him publicly after his passing, the words were specific in the way that real grief tends to be. She mentioned his ability to make everyone laugh. She mentioned his love for tattoos and for his cat and his mother. She mentioned the little glimpses of vulnerability that she treasured. She called him Road Dog. "We miss his laughter. We miss his sense of humor," she told an interviewer months later. "That sense of humor is what kept us together." She was still recovering from 2 surgeries. She was publicly grieving a man who had been part of her professional life for a decade. And November 2024 brought the next blow. At this point in the story, most people walked away. What she did instead is the part nobody talks about. In November 2024, Danielle posted a quiet, uncharacteristic message on Instagram. She was asking fans to send healing energy to her sister Annie. No specifics, no diagnosis, just a request for support and a clear signal that something serious was happening inside the family. 3 weeks later, in December 2024, she posted a video update canceling all upcoming burlesque performances. Every show, every scheduled appearance, gone. "I have had some very serious health issues happening within my family," she told her followers directly, on camera. "It's not my health I'm speaking of. For the foreseeable future, I will not be traveling for performances. The only exception, American Pickers. She would keep working the show. Everything else was suspended indefinitely." Then, in January 2025, her main public Instagram account, an account that had been her primary connection to fans for years, went dark. The page became unavailable. No announcement, no farewell post, just gone. For followers who had been watching the health updates accumulate over 2 years, the disappearance read as something worse than it was. False death hoaxes had already been circulating online since August 2024. Fabricated posts claiming she had died, which she was forced to publicly refute. One post she quoted back directly, adding the words, "I'm pretty sure I'm not dead." She was not gone. She was rebuilding. Here's what the comments kept asking, and here's the answer they never got until now. April 2025. Danielle Colby returned to Instagram from a new account connected to her burlesque persona, Danny Diesel. The message was long and considered. She had not taken the stage in months. She had missed performing. She described the period of silence as one defined by huge sacrifices tied to a project she had been quietly building. She said she was thankful for each one of those sacrifices. That project was the Yggdrasil Arts Museum. It opened in Davenport, Iowa on June 21, 2025, inside a building with original hardwood floors and original tin ceilings. Appointment-based. Built to preserve the history of burlesque performance through costumes, artifacts, and historical exhibits drawn largely from Danielle's own personal collection, accumulated over decades. Her husband, Jeremy Scheich, a photographer she had been with since 2020, and married in Puerto Rico in February 2024, built the physical interior of the space himself. When Danielle was asked about it, she credited him directly. "Jeremy, my husband, he built everything." The day after the museum opened, she posted a photo of herself and Jeremy at the event. The caption read, "Thank you for building me a museum and being the best ever." She was back on American Pickers for season 27. She returned to the burlesque stage in May 2025. The museum was open. The Instagram was active again. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. A child raised to believe her choices were wrong, who built a career out of every identity the people around her told her to abandon, spent the hardest 3 years of her life fighting her own body, grieving a person she cared about, and holding her family together, and came out the other side with a museum. What comes next for Danielle Colby is the Yggdrasil Arts Museum, continuing to grow, American Pickers Season 27 currently airing on the History Channel, and a return to the burlesque stage she refused to permanently leave behind. The question this story leaves you with is this: Danielle Colby has walked away from nothing despite losing almost everything at once. Would you have done the same, or would one of those blows have been the one that made you stop?